This week, Parashat Naso is the longest parasha in Torah, and he has 176 psukim, and Gemara Bava Batra has 176 dafim, and Kufyutet has 176. 176 is 8 times 22. 22 letters of Torah. Now, this letter of Torah in Olam Hazeh has 8 types of expression. 7 days of creation, and one, Maharal says, 8 is the Malam Nateva. That's all expressions that we could find. Although each day has its own expression, 7th are Shabbat, and 8th is the Malam in Hateva. Very interesting that Maharal says by that side Chanukah is 8. Therefore, that's the greatest expression that we could find in this world. Therefore, after Matan Torah, you have the longest parasha, and you have longest midrash in the parasha. Hopefully, that means to say Har Sinai was real. It wasn't Memorial Day. It made the impact on us that we have produced more Torah. Like Torah says, Torah Parin Berabim. Now, it is a very special message in Parashat Naso that comes right after Matan Torah that Yachad Kollel brings about. And that's a very unique and interesting. In the beginning of the parasha talks about the Levim. From the Sefer Bamidbar, we start talking about Hashem has chosen the Levim to be the one who works in the Tamil Dash, and they work. And our Torah says what type of job they have, and each person, Pikudim, that they have to do. And then our Torah says that they have to be careful, the Levim. And then even the parasha of Sota that comes, Sota, the remedy of the Sota comes to Kohen, because the Kohen is the source of Kedusha, Tahara, to maintain the Kedusha of Tahara of the Hal Israel. And so on and so on. Now, somebody goes in through Torah and reads all of this Parashat Bamidbar with all of the notes that Torah says about Levim, he gets an idea. What's the idea that he gets? His idea, maybe, in other words, we see Shevet Levi, Zera Aharon, Kohen Gadol, all of the Kedusha of Kohen Gadol, Kohanim, they shouldn't be metame to somebody dies, and Kohen Gadol should not be metame to anybody. Therefore, we understand that somehow the Kedusha relates to the family. If the family is Kadosh, it's from Shevet Levi, from Shevet Aharon, then it's Kadosh. But somebody who is not a family that's Kadosh, then it doesn't have any room. Maybe he could get to some level, but to get to height, he would not get. On that, Yachad Kollel says right away, Hashbar says Parasha of Nazir. What's Parasha of Nazir? Parasha of Nazir, we say, Ish Nisha ki yafli lindo neder la'azer la'Hashem. Ki yafli. Parasha of Nazir is Ish or Isha, a man or lady. It's not only for men, even ladies. What does Yafli mean? What does Yafli mean? Rashi says Yafresh. What does Yafresh mean? Yafresh means separating. Somebody separates himself into Nazir, Nazir, Hazir, Hashem. Makes a Nazir, Nazir, Hashem, and doesn't drink wine and shechar, and even from the vinegar of Yain should not drink. And Novim Lachim, grapes should not drink. Whatever that meant, should not do. He would not raise there, would not show, and he would not metam himself, and he has to let his hair grow. For the nefesh of the dead body would not come. Now, listen to this. For his father, for his mother, for his brother, for his sister, he would not be metam himself. In other words, that halacha we have only by Kohen Gadol. Even Kohen Hediot could be metame by relatives. By Nazir, cannot, for us is also. Because the crown of his God is on his head. Kohen is Kadosh, Ula Hashem is Kadosh. Now, by Kohen Gadol, Torah says, Nezer Mishchat Elokav Arosho. The crown of the Mishcha, the anointment, the oil of anointment is on his robe. Because the oil anointment has to do with the family. Since his family was anointed for the Kedusha, therefore it has a crown, should not be metame. But here, Nazir, he doesn't have Nazir Eloka Barusho. It's the crown of his God on his head. Therefore, it shouldn't be Metamim. Therefore, Torah is telling us somebody just like that becomes the Kedusha of Kohen Gadol. He gets achieved the Kedusha of Kohen Gadol. Now, the Farshim are very wondered here that what happened? How come he becomes such a holy man? To become Kohen Gadol is not so pashut. Gadol beneath Darga, level, Kedusha. When somebody, if you're Neder Azim, Ibn Ezra says, Yafli comes from the notion of Pele. What does Pele mean? Pele means wondrous. Something that is Pele, something that you are wondered. When you see that, you say it's amazing. Yafli. Now Ibn Ezra says, why is it Pele? Because we are living in a world that a person is Gashmi, so it's materialistic, it's a goof. The goof wants to follow after the goof, after the desire of the goof. Desire of the goof is, the body is to have enjoyment, to have, to enjoy yourself with the wine, with whiskey, with all of these type of things. Now, somebody sees that these things could be damaging him, could be damaging his ruchniot, and he commits himself to depart from these things. A full commitment. Makes himself Nazir. What does Nazir mean? He makes the commitment that he sees that these things are damaging him, and he doesn't want to go. They were observing Ibn Ezra, he's doing something pele. Because most people, when they are involved in the Gashmiut and materialistic, they follow. Now somebody put stop and says, I understand that these things are damaging my neshama, and I don't want to go after that. That creates such kedusha in the person that Torah says that becomes like a Kohen Gadol. Becoming like a Kohen Gadol is somebody who understands and relates that, these things are not useful to me, they are damaging me, and he decides, he commits himself. The procedure of just deciding and committing yourself, Torah says he gets that darga. In other words, not only he didn't practice it yet. We don't know whether he could accomplish, but the fact that he is motivated and he wants to become Karov HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he puts an end to this thing, and he wants to follow the Gedra of the Dusha of the Torah. He sees that these things are causing me to become Tameh. Imagine somebody could become Kohen Gadol from childhood. He grows up with his father. What's the halacha of B'tamikdash? What are the halacha of Tumah B'tahara? So all of these things he keeps. Now here we are, somebody who become motivated and he wants to do the Ratzon of Hashem and depart himself from the Gashmiut. He does, like Ibn Ezra says, he does something that's wonder, and that becomes, now the Torah says, very interesting, Torah says that when he comes, the Nazir is over, he comes and then he cuts his hair, and he gets haircut, and where does he put the hair? He uses as a fuel for the sacrifice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, the Zebach Shelamim is the Zebach, the sacrifice for Hashem. Now, the fuel for burning that korban, that cooking that korban, that the Kohanim, they should eat it and become kapara, through kapara. Where does the fuel come from? The fuel comes from the hair. The hair comes from the fact that he wanted to put stop on his Yetzer Hara. Any act, any motivation, any type of effort that a person puts, that he wants to stop the temptation and he wants to go derech of Hashem, becomes such a person himself, becomes such a kadosh, like a Kohen Gadol, and even the hair, that he let it grow. He didn't make himself nice and to go after this because he understands that this is cause of that. He stops that hair becomes kadosh. That hair from the tumah becomes the kedusha, And Torah says you put it under the sacrifice that the Kohanim they're gonna eat and create kapara. How does it cook? It cooks with the hair of the Nazir that decided to. The Al-Shah says the Parashat of Nazir is a very appropriate parasha right after Shavuot, because people saw the greatness of Torah. They understood the depth of Torah. And they say, okay, now we understand Torah is for a segment of people that they could sit down and to understand it, to go through it. We are very far away from the Kiddush of Torah. We are far away to become Kohen Gadol. Now, Torah gives Parashat of Nazir to say anybody that he wants, he could get the Kiddush of Kohen Gadol, he could become Kadosh. And that is the message of Shavuot. Shavuot, like Rambam says, crown of Torah is put munach, kolaba, rotzevlito. Whenever he wants, he comes and takes it. Torah doesn't belong to a family, doesn't belong to a segment. It belongs to all the Halisrael. The Kedusha, nobody could put the Kedusha in his pocket and call it and say that you are Kedusha and got nothing to do with you. The Kedusha of the Halisrael belongs to every Jew. Every Jew as long as he. And a lot of times, what do we learn from here? Any act, even a small act of stopping temptation, doing something that you could stop temptation. Whatever temptation is, that in itself is like it goes on the sacrifice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It becomes part of the korban of Hashem. A lot of times we feel that nowadays we cannot bring korban for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but that's the greatest korban for HaKadosh Baruch Hu that a person should be able to do and bring for Hashem.